Chapter 4.2. How the Empirio-Symbolist. Yushkevich ridiculed the Empirio-Criticist Chernov. It is, of course, amusing, writes Mr. P. Yushkevich, to see how Mr. Chernov tries to make the agnostic positivist Kantian and Spencerian, Mikhailovsky, a forerunner of Mach and Avenarius, up. Sit. p. 73. First of all, what is amusing here is Mr. Yushkevich's astonishing ignorance. Like all Voroshilovs, he conceals this ignorance under a display of erudite words and names. The passage quoted is from a paragraph devoted to the relation between Marxism and Marxism. And although he undertakes to treat of this subject, Mr. Yushkevich does not know that for Engels, as for every materialist, the adherents of the Humean line and the adherents of the Kantian line are equally agnostics. Therefore, to contrast agnosticism generally with Marxism, when even Mach himself confesses to being a follower of Hume, is simply to prove oneself an ignoramus in philosophy. The phrase agnostic positivism is also absurd, for the adherents of Hume in fact call themselves positivists. Mr. Yushkevich, who has taken Petzold as his teacher, should have known that Petzold definitely regards Empirio-criticism as positivism. And finally, to drag in the names of Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer is again absurd, for Marxism rejects not what distinguishes one positivist from another, but what is common to both and what makes a philosopher a positivist instead of a materialist. Our Voroshilov needed this display of words so as to mesmerize his reader, to stun him with a cacophony of words, to distract his attention away from the essence of the matter to empty trifles. And the essence of the matter is the radical difference between materialism and the broad current of positivism, which includes Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, Mikhailovsky, a number of neo-Kantians, and Mach and Avenarius. The essence of the matter has been very accurately expressed by Engels in his Ludwig Feuerbach, where he places all the Kantians and Humeans of that period, that is, the 80s of the last century, in the camp of wretched eclectics, betafoggers, flahnacker, literally, flea-crackers, and so on. 2. To whom this characterization can and must apply is a question on which our Voroshilovs did not wish to reflect. And since they are incapable of reflecting, we shall cite one illuminating comparison. Engels, speaking both in 1888 and 1892 of the Kantians and Humeans in general, mentions no names. 3. The only reference Engels makes to a book is his reference to the work of Stark on Feuerbach, which Engels analyzed. Stark, says Engels, takes great pains to defend Feuerbach against the attacks and doctrines of the vociferous lecturers who today go by the name of philosophers in Germany. For people who are interested in this afterbirth of German classical philosophy, this is a matter of importance. For Stark himself it may have appeared necessary. We, however, will spare the reader this, Ludwig Feuerbach, s. 25. 4. Engels wanted to spare the reader, that is, to save the Social Democrats from a pleasant acquaintance with the degenerate chatterboxes who call themselves philosophers, and who are implied by this afterbirth. We opened Stark's book, C. in Stark, Ludwig Feuerbach, Stuttgart, 1885, and find constant references to the adherents of Hume and Kant. Stark dissociates Feuerbach from these two trends. Stark quotes in this connection Ariel, Windelband and Ailing, pages 3, 1819, 127, etc., in Stark. We open Avenarius, the human concept of the world, which appeared in 1891, and on page 120 of the first German edition we read, the final result of our analysis concurs, although not absolutely, durchgehend, in the measure of the various points of view with that reached by other investigators, for example, E. Laws, E. Mach, Ariel, W. Wundt. See also Schopenhauer. Whom was our Voroshilov Yushkevich jeering at? Avenarius has not the slightest doubt as to his kinship in principle, not regarding any particular question, but regarding the final result of Empirio-criticism to the Kantian's Relan laws and to the idealist want. He mentions Mach between the two Kantians. And, indeed, are they not all one company, since Real and laws purified Kant a la Hume, and Mach and Avenarius purified Hume a la Berkeley? Is it surprising that Engels wished to spare the German workers, to save them from a close acquaintance with this whole company of flea-cracking university lecturers? Engels could spare the German workers, but the Voroshilovs do not spare the Russian reader. It should be noted that an essentially eclectic combination of Kant and Hume, or Hume and Berkeley, is possible, so to speak, in varying proportions, by laying principal stress now on one, now on another element of the mixture. We saw above, for instance, that only one Megan, H. Kleinpeter, openly admits that he and Mach are solipsists, that is, consistent Berkeleans. On the other hand, the Humean trend in the views of Mach and Avenarius is emphasized by many of their disciples and followers, Betzold, Willy, Pearson, the Russian Empirio-Criticist Lesevich, the Frenchman Henri Delacroix, and others. We shall cite one example, an especially eminent scientist who in philosophy also combined Hume with Berkeley, but who emphasized the materialist elements of this mixture. He is Thomas Huxley, the famous English scientist, who gave currency to the term agnostic and whom Engels undoubtedly had chiefly and primarily in mind when he spoke of English agnosticism. Engels in 1892 called this type of agnostics shamefaced materialists. 5. James Ward, the English spiritualist, in his book Naturalism and Agnosticism, wherein he chiefly attacks the scientific champion of agnosticism, Huxley, Volume 2, p. 229, bears out Engels' opinion when he says, in Huxley's case indeed the leaning towards the primacy of the physical side, series of elements Mach calls it, is often so pronounced that it can hardly be called parallelism at all. In spite of his vehement repudiation of the title of materialist as an affront to his untarnished agnosticism, I know of few recent writers who on occasion better deserve the title, Volume 2, pages 30 to 3 liters. And James Ward quotes the following statements by Huxley in confirmation of his opinion: anyone who is acquainted with the history of science will admit, that its progress has, in all ages, meant, and now more than ever means, the extension of the province of what we call matter and causation, and the concomitant gradual banishment from all regions of human thought of what we call spirit and spontaneity. Or, it is in itself of little moment whether we express the phenomena of matter in terms of spirit, or the phenomena of spirit in terms of matter. Each statement has a certain relative truth, relatively stable complexes of elements, according to Mach. But with a view to the progress of science, the materialistic terminology is in every way to be preferred. For it connects thought with the other phenomena of the universe. Whereas the alternative, or spiritualistic, terminology is utterly barren, and leads to nothing but obscurity and confusion of ideas. Thus there can be little doubt, that the further science advances, the more extensively and consistently will all the phenomena of nature be represented by materialistic formulae and symbols. Volume 1, p. 1719. So argued the shamefaced materialist Huxley, who refused to accept materialism, regarding it as metaphysics that illegitimately goes beyond groups of sensations. And this same Huxley wrote, if I were obliged to choose between absolute materialism and absolute idealism, I should feel compelled to accept the latter alternative. Our one certainty is the existence of the middle world. J. Ward, Volume 2, p. 216. Huxley's philosophy is as much a mixture of Hume and Berkeley as is Mach's philosophy. But in Huxley's case the Berkeleyan streaks are incidental, and agnosticism serves as a fig leaf for materialism. With Mach the coloring of the mixture is a different one, and Ward, the spiritualist, while bitterly combating Huxley, pat Savinarius and mock affectionately on the back.